We are live.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, everybody. And are we also streaming now?
Yes, we are on YouTube.
Okay. Okay, then let's start. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, assalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, brothers and sisters. Inshallah, we are starting a new topic this week, which is about Quran and its aspects of miraculousness. Actually, what the Lighthouse for Humanity team has told me is that our uh, intention is to focus on this topic until, I guess, the last week of Shaban. And then we're going to switch to a new topic during the month of Ramadan. Uh, our topic is the Quran's miraculousness. In the pursuit of understanding the miraculousness of Allah's books, the discussions are going to be circulating about two questions. The first one is, what makes the Quran special above all texts, including all other divine revelations, sayings of our beloved Prophet ﷺ, as well as all the books written by believers and unbelievers? And the second question that we're going to ask and try to find answers to is, what is meant by the miraculousness of Quran, and how should we understand this concept? Inshallah, I pray that this is going to be a fruitful, spiritually and intellectually beneficial discussion, especially as we are approaching Ramadan, which is the month in which the Quran was revealed. In that respect, inshallah, these discussions are going to be some sort of means to get ready for Ramadan. Today, our panelists are joining from very different locations again. Dr. Colin Turner Hojam is joining from Durham, the United Kingdom. Fatih Atalay Abi is joining from New Jersey, United States. And me, Saleh, will be moderating the discussion from Kastamonu, Turkey. And I have to mention that we would like our volunteers, our audience to join the discussion, and we are asking for your contributions. Please do not hesitate to share your comments or ask your questions to our panelists. Before we move on, I would like to start off with a brief clarification about the word choice for Mu'jizat al-Qur'aniyya, which is translated as miraculousness of the Quran. Ustad in the Risale-i Nur uses mu'jizat in place of miracles. The word mu'jizat is derived from the word ajaza, which means to incapacitate or to leave someone helpless or powerless to do something. And I believe a small note worthy of mentioning is that what really is meant when Ustad Nursi talks about Mu'jizat al-Qur'aniyya are the unique aspects, high qualities, and rhetorical sublimity of the Book of Allah pertaining to Quran, leaving us helpless. Understanding this and internalizing, digesting it will, inshallah, will be a big step in understanding our ajz and faqr, which is impotence and poverty before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only in the material sense, but also in the immaterial sense. Uh, and the last note is speaking and writing might seem to be an easy thing for all of us. However, the overarching and all-encompassing and unendurable tone of Quran is, without any doubt, unmatchable. I think this is going to be the one of the major takes that I guess all of us should have. Okay, I'll go ahead and start reading. Today we're going to be reading parts from the seventh ray, which is Ayatul Kubra, the supreme sign, from the Risale-i Nur Collection. And we're going to read the 17th degree of the first station. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Knowing the aim of life in this world and the life of life to be believed, the tireless and insatiable traveler through the world who was questioning the universe concerning his sustainer then said to himself, let us refer to the book called the Quran of Miraculous Exposition, Quran Mu'jiz al-Bayan, which is known as the word and speech of the one we are seeking, and is the most famous, brilliant, dominant book in the world, challenging everyone in every century who does not submit to it. But first, we must prove that it is the book of the Creator, and he started to search. Since the traveler lived at this time, he looked first at the Risale-i Nur, which consists of flashes of the Qur'an's miraculousness, and saw that its 130 parts are fine points and lights of the verses of that distinguished Furqan between truth and falsehood, and authentic explanations of them. Although through striving and endeavor the Risale-i Nur has spread the Quranic truths everywhere in an age as obstinate and atheistic as this, the fact that no one has opposed to it successfully proves that the Quran, which is its master, source, authority, the Son, is heavenly and revealed and not man's word. Only one proof of the Quran out of the hundreds of the Risale-i Nur, the 25th word, which is about Mu'jizat Qur'aniyah, together with the last part of the 19th letter, which is about Mu'jizat Ahmadiyya, has proved so decisively that the Quran is miraculous in 40 aspects that everyone who has seen them, rather than criticizing or objecting to them, has been full of wonder at their proofs, appreciating and praising them. So referring it to the Risale Nur to prove the Quran's miraculous aspect and its being the word of Allah, the traveler only noted with brief indications several points demonstrating its greatness. First point, just as with all its miracles and all its truths, which are an indication of its veracity, the Quran is a miracle of Muhammad والسلام, so too with all his miracles and the evidences of his prophethood and perfections of his knowledge, Muhammad والسلام, is a miracle of the Quran and a decisive proof that it is the word of Allah. The second point, the Quran caused a transformation in social life in this world in so luminous, happy, and truthful a fashion, and brought about such a revolution in both men's souls and hearts and spirits and minds, and in their personal lives, social lives, and political lives, and continued and directed that revolution, that every minute for 14 centuries its 6,666 verses have been recited with deep reverence by the tongues of at least 100 million men, and it has trained men, purified their souls, and cleansed their hearts, and has caused spirits to unfold and progress, given direction and light to minds, and vitality and happiness to life. For sure, such a book has no like. It is a wonder, a marvel, a miracle. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here and then give the stage to our panelists. Uh, Colin Hocam, would you like to start? Or
Inshallah, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think the first point is interesting, and by way of context, maybe we should look at this. It shows how linked, how inextricably linked the Quran is with the one to whom the Quran was revealed, to Muhammad. From one perspective, they appear to be inseparable, actually. Without the Prophet, there couldn't have been the Quran, and without the Quran, which self-identifies as the final written message of God to mankind, the Prophet would have had no mission, and he certainly wouldn't have had the status of Khatam al-Anbiya, the seal of the prophets. So prophethood and revelation, I think we need to see them as being mutually dependent and inextricably linked, as I said. They come together as a package. Having said that, revelation is actually primordial, and in one sense, it precedes prophethood, in one sense. Ustad Nursi emphasizes on numerous occasions the fact that revelation is a natural follow-on from divine existence. Revelation is necessitated by the existence of God's beautiful names. We know that God has Asma'i Husna, beautiful names which demand to be seen and to be appreciated. And so the manifestation of the divine names in the form of the universe, the form of the beings which make up the cosmos, is itself revelation. So the beings that we see in the universe are all words of God, actually, embodied words of God. And Ustad Nursi often describes the universe as the book of creation, Kitab al-Kainat, which is this vast collection of divine words that are waiting to be read, waiting to be interpreted, and waiting to be understood. So revelation is primordial, and I would even describe it as a brute fact. If there is God, there is revelation. Even before we get to talk about divine books and prophets, the fact of the matter is that revelation is core, and it is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. It's all embracing. Now, at the same time, Ustad Nursi is always quick to point out that God self-identifies as one who wants to speak to his creation, not only in the language of lisan hal, mute eloquence, if you wish, but also in the spoken language of humankind. And to speak in the language of humankind requires the existence of a means of communication through which that divine discourse can be channeled. So revelation and prophethood are linked. The existence of the Qur'an is necessitated by the fact that human beings communicate with each other in verbal language. So God necessitates revelation. Revelation is both non-verbal and verbal. It's non-verbal since everything in existence talks about and points to its creator. And it's verbal in the sense that revelation must also appear in the language with which humans communicate with one another. And that is through speech. Speech is the most direct form of communication. And so just as God is bound to reveal himself through the mute eloquence of created beings, he is also bound to reveal himself through the system of verbal symbolism which human beings use to communicate with one another, namely speech. And so divine speech is both verbal and non-verbal. So in short, we're talking about Qur'an. The Qur'an is necessitated by the existence of a God who communicates verbally as well as non-verbally. And the existence of a guide who can explain the revelation, the prophet, is necessitated also by the existence of the revelation itself. So I just wanted to explain a little bit to contextualize about how the prophet and revelation are both necessitated by the existence of God. I think this gives it a context, and it's a point of departure for us, I think. That's all I wanted to say at the beginning.
Salah, we cannot hear you. I think you are muted.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Okay.
can now.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I just muted from the button. I was saying that Colin Hojam, that's a very comprehensive introduction to start with. And basically what you're saying, from, if I understood it correct, revelation is a requirement because of Allah's existence. And one way that we can interpret is that the manifestations of names of Allah in the form of the universe is one way of revelation, and mute eloquence, lisan hal, is the language that this universe is speaking when they are kind of announcing or proclaiming Allah, and the other is the verbal revelation, and this is true to prophets, and because this first type of revelation is somehow veiled, and it requires some good amount of effort to decipher. However, the verbal revelation, which is in the form of Quran, is maybe more easy to comprehend and understand by humans. Can we say that?
I think you've actually captured everything I said in 3 or 4 very eloquent sentences. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, Fatih abi, do you have any points to mention as we start this?
I'd like to talk about a little bit about the introduction part that we read. This part we are reading as brothers and sisters who are familiar with Risale-i Nur would know. It's a very concise summary of various different topics about Quran from the Risale-i Nur, and some of these sentences have like pages of explanations in different parts of Risale-i Nur. So it's like really very concise summary of maybe more than 100 pages. And the thing is referring to the Risale-i Nur. Risale-i Nur is one of the exegesis of the Quran. And there are like thousands of them written throughout the history. And there are thousands of students, some of whom dedicated their whole life studying those tafsirs and also Risale. And as Ustad Nursi mentions in several places, it's like the topics he's studying on Quran, they are only droplets from the oceans of meanings from Quran. So it is, I mean, it's a book like maybe 600 pages, but thousands of volumes of books written on it. It's a book that has that much meaning, and that's a miracle by itself.
All right, Fatih abi, thank you for your comments about this. And so it's really an interesting fact that Quran is one single book, as you just said, but there are millions of people who have been studying this and still studying. And Risale-i Nur, as Ustad is pointing out in the passages that we are added in the slides, Ustad is pointing out to the fact that Risale-i Nur is only one among many, maybe thousands of different exegeses, tafasir of the Quran. And and Ustad's comments about proving Quran to be an authentic book, he's saying that basically he's not making any assumptions about the audience when he's talking about such proofs, because in this and in the second slide he's saying that Ustad is still in the state of questioning in different levels of the matters it covers. Ustad is always questioning the premises that we often take as granted, and comes with either a full proof or at least a sketch of it. And in this case, I guess the situation is the same. Ustad is starting off with a sketch of a long proof of that the Quran is the book of Allah. And Ustad is turning our gazes to Risale-i Nur as a proof of this. And actually, he's not making any assumptions about the audience being a believer. And he's starting off from the ground and trying to build up the final, like he's trying to build up from the bottom all the way to the complete proof. And he is not making any assumptions about the audience being a believer. I think this is an interesting style of the Risale-i Nur. Fatih abi, would you say anything more about this? I mean, the Risale-i Nur is not making any assumptions about the reader, and assuming does not make any assumptions about the reader being a believer, but he is always trying to come up with proofs. Would you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is like this because I believe it like this is not a logical proof. I mean, if he said that, then other people who are not Muslims, I mean, wouldn't have any lesson taken from it. So, I mean, logic is, I mean, if it is used like correctly, it's something universal. So if you're talking about something universal, it should be talking to everybody.
I see. So it has to look to everybody. And Colin Hocam, I would like to direct this question to you because we know that you are in the academia and you're writing a lot of books, and some of them are about Bediüzzaman Said Nursi. And so you're most probably the most like the authority among us who has the highest skills in articulating in materials. So Ustad is choosing this path in proving the matters about Iman. Would you have any reflections on this style of Ustad?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Oh, I was trying to say that Ustad is saying that there are many proofs of the Quran. And since we are living in this age, he is bringing proofs from the Risale-i Nur. He does not from the very beginning assume that Quran is the book of Allah, but instead he is trying to convince the reader in different ways that Quran is indeed a revelation. He is trying to come up with proofs about the authenticity of the Quran. Many other books about Islam are kind of assuming that the reader has some background knowledge about what Allah is, what Quran is, and making assumptions about the reader. The reader is assumed to be a believer, and then the books are giving more details about some matters of Iman and Islam. But Ustad is not taking that path. Instead, he is trying to prove every premise that he is coming up with.
What Ustad Nursi is doing is what the Quran itself does. The Quran is predicated on the fact that its readers believe in the unseen. So it's really the lowest common denominator. It's not assuming that they know who God is, but at least they believe in the unseen. It's also predicated on the fact that it is written for people to read with an open mind. So if you believe in the unseen and you read with an open mind, then you should be able to come to a conclusion who your Rabb is. And again, Quran is not a book which tries to prove the existence of God. It's a book which tries to prove the existence of one God, because everyone believes in the existence of God. And so that is what the Quran tries to do. And of course, in turn, what the Risale-i Nur is trying to do is trying to indicate that this book cannot be written by a human being, or by jinn, or by an editorial board, or by anyone else but the creator of the universe, because there is a direct alignment between the universe that we live in and also the Quran. And what Ustad tries to do is what the Quran tries to do, because the Risale-i Nur is a mirror held up to the Quran, as we know. And what the Quran is telling us to do is to look at the universe, look at the signs which exist in yourselves and on the horizons, in other words, throughout the universe, and you will see that they are indicating the existence of an all-encompassing, omniscient, omnipresent creator. And so just as the Quran is inviting us to look in the universe, through the universe, and to see whether we can find any fault, what the Risale-i Nur is doing the same with respect to the Quran. In this particular treatise, it's saying, look at the Quran. Can you see any fault in it? Can you see whether it is aligned with the creation? Because it is a guide to the creation. It's like a guidebook to the creation. Can you see any fault in it? And when he talks about being miraculous in 40 aspects, 40 there is an iconic number which simply means many. Now, it may be that Ustad Nursi does mention 40, literally, but 40 means many, many. It means actually countless. The Quran is miraculous in countless respects, from countless aspects. And this is what Ustad Nursi does in his, particularly in the 25th word, but also throughout the Risale-i Nur. He tries to give indications of why the Quran is miraculous.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Korinajam. And so what we are seeing in the Risale-i Nur is nothing but just the style of the Quran written or taken as a so Ustad is taking the style of the Quran and then teaching us in his book. So it is not a surprise to see that this type of a style manifested in the Risale-i Nur. Okay, let's move on. So in this first and second points, the topic is slightly switching to other aspects of miraculousness of Quran. I would like to read the first point again, and then again give the stage to our panelists again to see what they would like to say about those. First point, just as with all its miracles and all its truths, which are an indication of its veracity, the Quran is a miracle of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So too, with all his miracles and the evidences of his prophethood, the perfections of his knowledge, Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is a miracle of the Quran, and it decides to prove that it is the word of Allah. So, Korinajam, you briefly mentioned the relation between revelation, the muted or lisan hal of the universe, and the verbal revelation, and you kind of made a connection in between those. But can you tell us more about how Quran is a miracle of our Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam? Would you have any further comments on that?
Well, we know that the Quran is necessitated by the existence of God, who communicates verbally as well as non-verbally. And the existence of the Prophet, the existence of a guide who can explain the revelation, is also necessitated by the existence of the revelation itself. So the existence of the Prophet is actually demanded by the existence of revelation. And the existence of God demands, as we said, it demands revelation, and it demands revelation in the verbal sense of the word as well as the non-verbal sense of the word at the very, very highest level. And therefore, there has to be a guide who is also at the very, very highest level of both intellectual and emotional maturity, and who is chosen by God as the guide. And so the two come together. So the Quran and the Prophet are really interlinked. They are lazim malzum, you know. Each one demands the existence of the other. So the existence of a guide who can explain the revelation is also necessitated by the existence of the revelation itself. So we know that God is possessed of absolute attributes of perfection, Asma Husna, and has words of self-revelation that are endless in number. It says in Quran, you know, if the seas were ink and the trees were pens, the words of God would never end. So we know that the words of divine self-revelation are endless in number and absolute in quality. So is it at all possible that God should create a universe in order to manifest himself and making it a vast book? The universe is a vast book, every page of which expresses, as Ustad says, a book of meanings, and every line of which expresses a page of meanings, and in every letter of which there are more lines, more pages, more chapters, more books, books within books within books. Is it possible that God would do that, but fail to send a guidebook written in a language that we can understand, and fail to send a guide who can teach that book to us? You know, the Quran is the guidebook to the vast book of the universe, and it explains it, interprets it, and makes it clear. That has to be in the hands of a guide who understands both the creation and the Quran itself. So the book of creation demands its own book of explanation. And one could say that just as the Risale is a commentary on the Quran is itself a commentary on the vast book of the universe, which is itself a commentary on its own author. And those things demand a human guide. And that is coming to us in the form of the Prophet, ﷺ, who is the human guide who makes clear to us the verses of the Quran and also the signs in the universe. So these things all come together in the character and in the person of the Prophet.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Colin Hocam, for these explanations and your comments when you say Quran is a commentary of the universe, and this also requires someone who is able to understand and convey these commentary is also a very nice point, I would say. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and read the second point, which is another another aspect of miraculousness of Quran. The Quran caused a transformation in social life in this world in so luminous, happy, and fruitful a fashion, and brought about such a revolution in both men's soul and hearts and spirits and minds, and in their personal lives, social lives, and political lives, and continued and directed that revolution that every minute for 14 centuries, its 6,666 verses have been recited with deep reverence by the tongues of at least 100 million men, and it has trained them, purified their souls, and cleansed their hearts, and has caused spirits to unfold and progress, given direction and light to minds, and vitality and happiness to life. For sure, such a book has no like. It is a wonder, a marvel, a miracle. So I guess the second point is more about the contribution or effect of Quran in personal lives, personal development, and also social life. And this is a total different aspect of the miraculousness of Quran. Fatih Abi, would you have any comments on this? What kind of effects does Quran have in the personal life and social life of people?
I mean, as human beings, we have lots of needs and wants. And if we do not follow any specific rules, then there would be no social life. So Quran gives us a guide for our life. It limits our wants so that we do not trespass to other people's
Quran teaches us our borders, which we
yeah,
should not cross.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a book, but it makes us do that without need of a police. So, and I mean, during the history, we have seen many civilizations, Muslim civilizations, which reflects that.
I see. So because of the conscience of human are nurtured and trained in such a way that even if there's no one trying to stop them, they do not even attempt to commit any crime or the teachings of Quran in some sense has the effect of a police waiting every human being individually to stop them. Is this what you're trying to say?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, these are very nice points because uh, uh, I have been in the US and saw how the society is shaped a little bit. And usually the laws and the police are kind of the pillars for the tranquility and standards in social life. However, Quran is interesting in that aspect. It is kind of is diffused into the minds and hearts of its believers, such that they, even if they want to commit an evil, they would stop thinking that Quran, the book of my Creator, is preventing me from doing this, and there is the akhirah, and there is the possibility of losing the appreciation of Allah about myself. So these are all very strong attraction forces that stops a person from committing evil.
And even some stuff that are legal or not evil per se, we don't do it because Quran tells us not to do it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting point because in I guess in the next slide, Ustad is going to mention that actually Quran is saying this, Quran is challenging the humanity to come up with a verse that is going to match the Quran as a whole or even as a single verse. But as you just said, the limits that are drawn by Quran are so comprehensive and does not leave a single hole in it that even today's civilization, especially in the US or UK, other more civilized countries, there might be some holes in the rules and regulations and ordinances, but Quran doesn't leave a single hole when it is drawing the shape of life that we have to live. And so I would like to, Colin Hocam, do you have any points that you want to make, or otherwise I will have questions to both of you about the second part?
As far as the second point is
Yes.
concerned, I think if we consider how the first revelation was received and what it signified, then I think that point becomes easier to understand. So when the first revelation was sent to the Prophet, he was told to Iqra. And it's clear now to me that Iqra meant not read, but interpret. Because at that time, there was nothing to read. The Quran didn't yet exist as a book between two covers. And so Muhammad responded that he wasn't really someone who was in a position to interpret. He said, how should I interpret? I'm not someone who can interpret. To which the response from the angel came, Iqra bismi rabbik. And we know the rest. So we are told in the ahadith that when this happened, when this response came, the whole world was flooded with light. Now, what does that mean? For the whole world to flood with light, as far as I can understand it, means that the darkness was taken away. But what kind of darkness? The darkness of unknowing, the darkness of ignorance, the darkness of confusion, of ambiguity, of lack of clarity. And I mean this on the social as well as the individual level. The world had been in darkness up until that point, particularly the Arabian Peninsula, like a room full of furniture which has no lights on. When you go into it, you bump into everything. Everything looks scary and nonsensical. You can't make sense of anything. And it's only when you turn the light on that you're able to see what's what and how you can get from one side of the room to the other, without knocking into everything and without hurting yourself. So the light of knowledge and the light of belief comes to dispel the darkness. And so when the Quran was given to humanity and first to the people of the Arabian Peninsula, the whole of the peninsula profited from it. It wasn't just the minds and the souls and the hearts of individuals that benefited from the Quran, because it wasn't that kind of book. It wasn't just a book addressing individual faith. It addressed the whole of society on various different levels and in various different ways. And if you look at Arab society of the time, you'll see that it very much resembled a dark room. The dark room in the example I gave, full of ignorance, confusion, social unrest, social iniquity, inequality, disequilibrium, the whole lot. And so the Quran was an address to individuals and to whole societies, such as the society into which the Prophet ﷺ had been born, and to the world as a whole. And so Ustad is talking here about the social changes which took place in the Arabian Peninsula within just a few years of the message appearing. So in the space of 23 years, which is how long the revelation took to be completed, Medina had become a community state. And within a generation or two, the whole area had become transformed in such a way that if you were to try to civilize the Arabian Peninsula today, it would take not a single man with a single book. It would take countless psychologists, sociologists, and historians and scholars. It would take them 200 years to bring about the same kind of transformation. In fact, I don't think that they would be able to bring about that kind of transformation in 2,000 years, to be honest.
Indeed.
But this is just, an example of the huge transformation that came about as a result of the Quran. And this is one book being explained by one man, and it brings about these revolutions and these transformations. And that is one of the miraculous aspects of the Quran. It is able to engender that kind of change in human society, and that is amazing.
Okay. MashaAllah, Colin Hocam, very, very interesting comments. Especially, I did not know about the hadith that you mentioned in the beginning of your this part of your speech, when you said Rasulullah والسلام, when he was commanded to read, and when he said he cannot do this, then the whole word was filled with nur, I guess, nur light.
I'm not sure whether it's a hadith or whether it's in the seerah, but there are lots of khabar, lots of what's the word, good news, which attended the advent of the Quran and also the birth of the Prophet, which talk about the world becoming filled with light. And I think we have to understand that as the coming of understanding, the coming of knowledge and the coming of wisdom that the advent of the Quran exemplifies. There's no other way of understanding it, because otherwise it just becomes, some fantastic thing happening, the whole sky becoming full of light. What does it mean?
Exactly. These are not light shows or anything that has no further
absolutely.
meaning into it. But
Yeah.
these are, so Ustad is saying, I'm going to tell this in Turkish and try to translate to English. But madde mana ile kaimdir. Material is kind of, it stands, it exists only through the meanings that are, attributed to it.
Yeah.
So the meaning is essential. Material aspect of whatever we are talking about is kind of one sort of manifestation, but the meaning is essential. And actually, since meanings are from ilmi ilahi, from the knowledge of Allah, they are eternal. But manifestations are ephemeral. They just happen and pass away. And in that respect, when you let's not call it a hadith, but let's call it a khabar. When Rasulullah والسلام, was commanded to read, and he said he cannot, then the skies and the world, the earth has been filled with light, is a manifestation of the underlying meaning, which says, with the revelation that Allah is going to give to Rasulullah, all the darknesses are going to be dispelled, or all the darknesses, which actually refers to the darkness of ignorance, darkness of lack of clarity, darkness of I don't know. You said a few good words for that. But so these darknesses are going to be dispelled. This is one interpretation of what happened when the earth and the skies were filled with light. And actually, so just a few points that are really very interesting to me about how Quran makes this world luminous and happy to me is, I don't know if brothers and sisters remember from, I guess, 10th word, you started saying that so your fathers and mothers, your parents, so you were not with them before you came to existence, and you're going to separate from them. Only with the teaching of Akhirah, your hurma, your respect, and your eagerness to serve them becomes meaningful, because in such a short life, which is only maybe 30 or 40 years, I mean, the period of your life when you live with your parents and when you can serve them is just a brief 30 or 40 years. And the separation is inevitable, but without the knowledge of Akhirah and the knowledge that you're going to meet again with your father and mother and your siblings, then this makes the social life, the family life, and personal life so luminous, happy, and joyful that any separation or any, death or sicknesses cannot spoil that happiness. So this was one interesting point that came to my mind. I just wanted to mention.
That's really nice. That's really interesting how you've put that, because it means that that gives us light in our social relationships as well.
Yeah.
You know, if we understand the meaning behind our relationships, then they're no longer simply material relationships for utilitarian benefit, you know, people just using each other to get what they want. They realize the meaning behind other people in their lives. And, you know, we have, our parents are there to show us what the rububiyah is, you know,
Exactly.
from a very, very close position. So if you don't understand the meaning, then they don't mean anything. Then we abuse them. We use them for what we want, you know. As soon as we're 16, 17, we leave home, you know, or we expect them to look after us or give us money whenever we want, but give them nothing in return. So it gives meaning to us, you know. The light of belief gives meaning to everything.
Exactly. So with the teachings of Quran, such details which are not visible to naked eye becomes visible. It's the metaphor of light is very suitable for explaining the effect of Quran in social life and also in personal life. Thank you. Okay, I mean, there's a lot to say about the second point, but again, Colin Hocam, Fatih abi, if you have anything else to say, we can continue talking about the second point. Otherwise, I'm gonna move on.
It would be good to see whether anyone else has any views.
Okay. I think Jazmi abi or Mustafa abi, if the volunteers ask any questions, I think they can ask through the chat, right? Or can they join the discussion verbally?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Yes, maybe, yeah, as you told, there are a lot to say on the second point regarding the transformation Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala making through Qur'an's message. It came to my mind. So you gave the example for social lives and for personal lives also. We can give example. Also, it came to my mind for the political lives. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending Quran and making the for example, the first Islamic state in Medina. So through the Sharia, the first established the Sharia, and based on what the pleasing of Allah, based on all, not as defined, not on benefits, personal benefits, but based on the pleasing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every matter of Quran is for how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with us. So when we base our matters on His pleasing, so everything, every individual of the society is benefiting from this, in a positive way. So, like for example, one aspect it comes to my mind, Rasulullah SAW is defining answer upon the question, who is the master of your community, comes a stranger outside of the Medina, and he's telling that the master of the community is the one who is serving to the community. At that time he was serving to the to the people at that time, at that moment, serving to the people. So one aspect of this, without any benefits, so a person should be serving to the community, can be master. So this is a very important aspect. It comes to my mind. Quran's point, at that meaning, teaching us in every aspect, to be useful to the community only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes.
Jazakallah, Jazmi Abi. Actually, you made a good job and talked about a point which all of us has missed to talk about, which is about the effect of Quran to political lives. And you came up with a beautiful hadith, which is, I guess, Rasulullah ﷺ was serving the Sahaba, and an outsider came to Medina and was surprised to see the leader of the community was actually serving them like individually, like a servant. But the interpretation is very beautiful, because as we see in the Eastern and in the Western lifestyle, the politicians dressed in polished, expensive suits are doing nothing really more than things similar to like Clash of Clans. So they're just doing it in a more professional way compared to what their counterparts in the past have done. So they are, although look more professional, look more eloquent when they talk about their policies and their plans for the society, they cannot really go further than clashing the nations. But as you just said, Quran commands the leaders to work for the good, for the benefit of the society. And with this hadith, actually Rasulullah is drawing the borderline. So be a servant to your nation, to your people. I don't know if I understood your comments correct, Ismail.
Thank you. Yes.
Just to add a small point, there's a section at the end of the book, the words. There's a section called Gleams, and there's a small part. The title is "The Quran Requires Mirrors, Not Someone to Act on Its Behalf." It's a very important point. Like as Muslims, we have to try to be mirrors to the teachings of Quran. Some people who are using Quran and then making taking some making some explanations which are not the reflection of the Quran itself, but like for example, like ISIS taking some of the verses out of context and then using it in a wrong way, and telling that it is from Quran. That's one of the biggest problems for this time. We try to be mirrors.
Okay, so the interpretation has to be like being a mirror. You have to be reflecting whatever Quran and Hadith says, and not to distort the meaning, such as to fit it to our benefits and aims. I guess if I understood your comments correct,
Yeah.
this is kind of what we have to do. Okay, so I think the time is almost over. So this third point is a little bit long. It's not. I don't think we will be able to make it in the remaining 2 or 3 minutes. I would like to take any questions or comments from volunteers if they have. Otherwise, I guess we have to stop here because, as I said, time is over. I'm checking the chat to see if there are any questions from. Okay. Okay, it looks like we don't have any other comments from the audience. Colin Hocam, would you like to do the closing prayer, and then we will finish here, inshallah.
Harun abi wants to comment, I think.
Okay. Harun abi, are you typing or are you going to speak instead?
I think we need to make him co-host to be able to speak.
I see.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm sorry for this last minute interruption before prayer from Colin Hocam. I wanted to add to what Fatih Atalay abi said. I guess at this point it is very important, and I want to also support his arguments, with another piece from Risale-i Nur. Sayyid Nursi Ustad clearly mentions there are as many Qur'ans as number of people in the world. That's how we understand. So I think the thing is, what Quran gives to everyone is really different. They are not quite the same. And that's in line with the creation being very diverse. So we cannot really take everyone in one pot and, want to suggest a clear and rigid meaning. So that would be, burden on Quran, and that would be very unjust for the reality, hakika. At this point, I just wanted to, add that it's wonderful mercy from Allah that His speech is endless, and His speech through Quran just is reflected within us, and all of us are different colors, and all of us are different kind of flowers, to reflect meanings of the Quran, which is endless, timeless, in a way. Thank you.
Jazakallah, Harun abi. And it's a very interesting comment, because at the end of the day, all the human beings are mirrors for name Ahad, and manifestations of Allah to every individual is special and specific. Thank you for your comments. Colin Hocam, would you be able to do the closing prayer for us?
I don't see Colin Hoca on the list.
Okay, Colin Hoca, I guess, has unfortunately dropped. Okay, we're going to continue with a discussion on Quran, inshallah, next week. And see you next week, inshallah. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم.